Welcome, everybody, to Straight Shoot, a wrestling podcast. I'm one half of your host, Santi. Today, we're going to be talking WrestleMania Fallout. We're going to be talking the Endeavor purchase of the WWE, and we're going to be talking about Vince McMahon, who now looks like Walt Disney in the 1950s, returning to creative potentially. Steve, how have you been?
I've been fantastic, Santi. I think after this week, I need about an entire weekend of absolutely nothing regarding professional wrestling. The travel down to Miami. Thank you to the local studio for putting us up for night one and night two with Heel Kev. What an experience that was to work with some incredible equipment and just be able to get some really cool content in a studio the size of something that might have been part of NBC. So awesome experience, fantastic experience. Buddy, how was your weekend? You looked like you were just going at a lightning pace with everything.
Yeah, it was nonstop. Like I'm actually a walking zombie right now. Like this isn't Santi. Like I died and came back to life. I'm the Undertaker. I honestly, like, just the amount of times that I was running back and forth and getting, back here in time for WrestleMania and being live for 7+ hours. It was crazy. But anyways, WrestleMania, what a show. All right. There's other things, I think, more pressing things that I want to talk about as opposed to like reviewing WrestleMania. But I will say right now, because we'll talk a little bit more about WrestleMania, that was one of the best WrestleManias in a really, really long time. You can talk about, there being lulls, but in my opinion, we've had WrestleManias where the entire damn thing was a lull. The majority of the matches on this WrestleMania card were absolute bangers. The results, whatever, they're objective, and we can talk about that as well, because I do think that it was the right choice to have Roman Reigns win, but again, we'll talk about that. Steve, for me, WrestleMania was a thumbs up. What about for you?
Santi, I know we stopped a while ago in putting things in ranking order and that kind of thing, but I can hands down easily say that this WrestleMania will forever live, at least for the next 10 years, in my top 5. I don't see another WrestleMania that, unless 40 is just a banger, this WrestleMania was shockingly good. On paper, and like we said before on our build to WrestleMania, that on paper, this could have been hands down one of the best WrestleManias of all time. But like we both said, anything on paper is terrifying because we have such high expectations of it. I was not disappointed in virtually maybe one or two things, but other than that, like Kevin and I said after night 2, we both gave it like a 7.5 to an 8.5 in a ranking out of 10. That was a banger of a weekend, man. Like anyone who went to that is blessed to have seen what they did live.
Frankly, it's the best WrestleMania I've seen since WrestleMania 19. I can't think of a better one since 19 in terms of just consistency from beginning to end. It was just an overall phenomenal show, but that just, as much as I want that to be the topic of conversation today, it just can't be. Before we hit the record button, one of the things that I said was, that WrestleMania really felt like it was like an awesome season finale to a wonderful show that we've had over the last 8 months. And then Monday Night Raw after Mania is supposed to be what many people in the wrestling community dub the season premiere of WWE. This is when new storylines are built. This is when people come back from injury. This is when debuts are made. For reference, for those that might be inundated with the world of Raw after Mania, this is where we've had the debuts of people like Goldberg, the return of Brock Lesnar, Paige winning the WWE Women's Championship, Dolph Ziggler cashing in the Money in the Bank. Just, it's known for being the best episode of free wrestling on the calendar year. That's what it's known for. And Steve, the Raw after Mania that we got was bad. Not bad for a Raw after Mania. It was a bad episode of Monday Night Raw, almost from head to toe. I was flabbergastedly disappointed with how colossally terrible that episode of Monday Night Raw was, to the point where numerous times I found myself saying, what the fuck was that? Example, Seth Rollins just going out there and fucking dancing for the crowd for 5 minutes with nothing to say, which apparently he had something to say and it got cut mid-show because guess what? That's tried and true Vince McMahon formula, changing things on the fly. And that seems to be the rumor mill right now, that Vince McMahon is back at the helm of creative firmly is what I'm hearing. See, what did you think of that episode of Monday Night Raw?
So, Santi, I had just gotten off a flight and I was busting my ass to get home, to get the studio set up, knowing that is the Raw after WrestleMania. I was breaking speed limits. I was swerving and everything. I wanted to get back because the Raw after Mania, like you said, is almost like, the way I explain it is like you get Christmas and then you realize Christmas isn't done because we get to go to grandma and grandpa's and there's more presents. That's exactly what the Raw after Mania is. It's that secondary dinner of Christmas presents and good food. And this was not that. This was like going to a third aunt that you don't see for another 20 years. The whole thing of Vince being at the helm, and I'll touch on that in a second. I want to hit the Seth promo. Because while I was sitting there, my chat was going, we were talking, and I'm like, this Raw has been so bad that they need something to wake the crowd up, because goddamn was the Los Angeles crowd absolutely flat last night from start to finish. Before we even knew what was going on, there's just, even with Triple H there, if Triple H comes out and gives a promo like that and cuts a promo like that, I'm out of my seat screaming left, right, and center. Like, and the crowd was dead even for that. But the Seth one, I was just like, okay, I see what they're doing. They're sending Seth out to bring the crowd back into the show. And I truly thought that's what it was, until you wake up this morning and you see the video of the creative team from the camera side saying, you're cut. Like, you're cut. And literally he's like, what is this shit? And then he dances out of the ring and you're like, that's when you're like, that's Vince. That is Vince, hands down, left, right, and center. And how do you go from having one of the greatest WrestleManias you've had in over a decade, and then you turn around and you take over? Don't fix it. Don't fix it if it's not broken. I think that's what I'm getting to. Don't fix it if it's not broken. And Vince, the Wish version of Walt Disney that he looks like right now, comes back in, sits in creative, and literally goes to Hunter Scripps. All right, let's start with shooting fish in a barrel and see what happens, you know? And nothing worked. Not even Riddle returning worked last night. The only two good segments was Hunter's promo. 3 good segments. Hunter's promo, Dom and Bad Bunny, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
It really spoke to the audience. It spoke to the Latin American audience to build a feud for Puerto Rico, which I'm all for. I think what they did there was perfect. And then the Brock turn. Great. Other than that, that could have all been done in 20 minutes. And what the fuck was the rest of that shit? Because none of it made sense. The pairings didn't even make sense. No mention of Bailey.
No, it was weird, dude. It was bizarre. Like you said, like it felt like it was like from the beginning, it felt like they were trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. Like it was just like it just didn't fit. It just didn't make sense what they were trying to do. Like even you know what, I will say, like the one piece from the mid card that I was like, okay, all right, I can get behind this is Bobby Lashley and Bronson Reed. I'm like, all right. Yes, new feud. This is what Monday Night Raw after Mania is about. You build new feuds, you build new storylines, you set out the course of the ship for the next several months into SummerSlam. But aside from that, what new things did we get? Like in terms of new feuds? Like nothing, really. Brock and Cody, I guess. But to me, that even feels superficial. It just feels like Vince, oh, I love big meaty Brock Lesnar. Back to the top of the card you go. It was heinously bad. It was poor pacing. Even the commentary team felt like it was deflated. the talent that was going out there, I felt like they were deflated and demoralized. And all I can point to is it being Vince McMahon. There's reports of top level superstars wanting out if this is the course that WWE is going to go in. And I think we can start to this topic of the conversation. I don't know if we can necessarily blame Vince McMahon here, because Vince McMahon is the smart genius who managed to con the idiots at Endeavor to put him as the chief executive officer of both the UFC and the WWE. Silly, ludicrous. I don't get it. He is the greatest con man of all time. So Vince McMahon, take a fucking vow, because you turned sexual assault allegations that should have been career ending, and they were career ending, into one of the most prominent and powerful positions in sports and entertainment that can be possibly fathomed, as the chief executive officer, chair, or whatever of Endeavor. Crazy.
Yeah, and we can get into this Endeavor conversation in about 2 seconds. But when I start seeing a lot of talk of Vince McMahon before WrestleMania, it was that little dark place on the map that you do not go. You know, like you can look at The Lion King. What's that dark place? Oh, that's Vince McMahon. We don't go over there. You know what I mean? And the rest of it was one of those ones where I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, everything is so good. And we're just riding this high that has been Triple H. And the worst part is I have a feeling we're not done with the negative, because Vince doesn't fucking care. This man has just made nearly $10 billion of his majority stake and ownership in WWE. This man doesn't care at this point. If he wants to sell it and then burn it to the fucking ground, he's going to do it. He's not going to listen to social media. He's not going to listen to Twitter. Like at first when you're like, oh, things on the fly, Vince is back in creative, blah, 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 blah. You're like, okay, but then Fightful and Wrestling News and Sean Ross Sapp and Dave Meltzer, who literally I don't like to talk about, but all his points today were actually good. Talking about Vince being back is one of the scariest things that WWE has right now. I'm just worried now he's going to walk into the UFC and we're going to get Francis Ngannou back fighting Conor McGregor, because that's just booking that Vince McMahon would do. You know, nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm praying for SmackDown.
Yeah. In pure just clarification to those that are listening, Vince McMahon is not the chief executive chair of WWE. He is the chief executive chair of Endeavor. That is above both Nick Khan, president of WWE, and above Dana freaking White in the UFC. So let that sink in for a second, that this man turned a career-destroying news sexual allegation into, once again, not just becoming the most important figurehead in professional wrestling, now one of the most important figureheads in sports, Steve.
In combat sports, yeah.
Sports. And I'm nervous, man. Let's talk a little bit about that Endeavor purchase, because I think right before this, you and I had I don't know if we're necessarily polar opposites. We haven't necessarily talked through it, because you were of the mind that Endeavor was one of the right contenders to purchase WWE. I think that they were potentially one of the worst ones that could buy the WWE. Do you want to go? Should I go? What are you thinking?
Well, here, I'm just going to make my statement very blunt and to the point. It's better than the Saudis.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, if now before anyone says I'm mistaken in what I'm saying, the Saudi government is actually a company. It's a whole company. It's not just I'm saying the Saudi government. Okay, so when I'm saying the Saudi government, I am talking about the company, not the
the Saudi Public Fund is what it's called.
The Saudi Public Fund. If the Saudis had taken over, we were going to be seeing a lot more international over, like they've been doing the UFC for the last couple of months, and they have not drawn good numbers. It's just all tourism for the Saudi Public Fund. Okay, that was my biggest concern. Okay. At least now we keep it North American and international at points. But I really think the Saudi public fund taking over, it would have been damaging to the the WWE in so many aspects. Okay. Then we can look at Disney. Disney, okay. I could have gotten behind Disney, but Disney, we've seen it happen with WCW where it was on the Disney lot. They were able to do a bunch of stuff with it. Now we're in a new world of like networks and bringing all the WWE stuff over to the network. Cool. That would have been fine, but it wouldn't have been, I don't believe, the idea and vision of WWE is its own entity. It's just another spoke on a wheel at Disney. Okay. This is why I'm looking at Endeavor. Endeavor is combat sports. You know, we look at Endeavor is like Kellogg's, right? And then you have all your other companies underneath, but their two main focuses are UFC and now WWE, and everything else filters out. These are the two main brands under this company now. And this is where I'm like, okay, Endeavor out of the three for me is the right choice because we can get, like, I'm a combat sports guy. I love combat sports. And the two main loves of mine are UFC and WWE. So the fact that these are together now, maybe it's a passion of mine saying that this is the best one and I'm not looking fully into it. But for me, the names on that wall of people in charge, minus Vince right now, because he pissed me off because of Raw, this is the best way it could have gone in my mind. So that's where my mindset is.
I don't know, man. I think like when you start to peel the layers, I'm just seeing, I feel like once you remove the makeup, Endeavor really is an ugly girl. At the end of the day, I think one of my biggest concerns is the UFC has been notoriously the worst sporting company when it comes to treating and taking care of its fighters and taking care of its employees, essentially, right? We have the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, all of them have collective bargaining agreements. All of them have players associations that fight and lobby in order to get players' rights, benefits, safety, protocols in place, taking care of all their medical bills, etc. And then we have the UFC, who's the complete polar opposite in preventing any of that from being put into place. Whatever, costs and money. I don't know what it might be. I don't work for the UFC, obviously, but the UFC is already notorious for being one of the companies that treats its athletes the worst out of all of the major sports. Sorry, you're looking to want to jump in.
Yeah, I'm just going to say this, but you need to look at it on the other aspect now. WWE back in the 90s was virtually the same as the UFC. That makes it worse. That's a terrible comparison. Let me finish. Then you saw all the things happening, i.e. Eddie, Test, all the other wrestlers that have passed away due to medical issues and treatment of how Vince kind of let the company run. They learned their lesson. And maybe with WWE coming in, you now blend these two companies where they say, okay, WWE's got the medical and the testing and all that, and we don't have to worry about USADA anymore just coming in and doing drug testing. USADA will be involved with UFC, but you now have the WWE people cross-platforming and talking to the UFC fighters and making those connections. In 5-10 years, you could see the medical that WWE has brought over to the UFC under this new banner of whatever the Endeavor company is then going to be called in the next 6 months.
Yeah, so, but
where you're coming from.
It took WWE two people dying in their 30s and one of them killing their whole families to be able to finally see the light and put that into place, right? And the UFC is not old enough for those fighters that have gotten CTE to do something horrible like that. It could eventually happen. I'm just saying where they are today, they are the worst of the major North American sports when it comes to treating their athletes. And now we're putting the WWE in the same umbrella as that. The WWE already wasn't great at that because they were contracted employees, but had they been under Disney, had they been under NBC, had they been under any other major media conglomerate, I think that we could have seen better rights and better working conditions for WWE superstars. I think that so I'll say this. I think that potentially the working conditions for WWE superstars just got worse, while the working conditions for UFC stars got slightly better. And I still think that's a net negative at the end of the day, because I see where you're saying now there's a lot, WWE is going to be bringing best practices of concussion protocols and nursing injuries and yada, yada, yada to the UFC. Yep. But I don't think that the net positive from that is ultimately good enough to erase the net negative of potentially the WWE talent's quality of life potentially coming down. So that's one of my points. The other one of my points is that UFC is has been more profitable than the WWE. That's why they are the bigger piece. They're a $12 billion company, WWE a $9 billion company, which, by the way, Endeavor heavily overpaid for because WWE had a market cap of $6.7 billion. I went deep into those numbers. Endeavor overpaid for the WWE. So they clearly see a strong future for the WWE, but they overpaid. So let's call UFC at a cap of 12 billion and WWE at 7. UFC is bigger than the WWE. Part of the reason that they're bigger is their pay-per-view model. Like, that's how they make their money, right? It's in the United States, the way that UFC works for any of our international audience, the way the UFC works is that you have to have a subscription to ESPN Plus, and then on top of that, buy the damn pay-per-view for $80 or whatever that is. So right now, WWE fans have been spoiled for the past 10 years with what I dare say is the best value in entertainment in the WWE Network.
Okay. This is where our age groups separate, though, because yes, we have been spoiled currently because of the networks or however we get our professional wrestling in North America. But go back to 2005, and from 1990 to 2005, we were doing the pay-per-view model anyways, and we were paying $79 back then. Back then, we were paying $79.
Oh, I'm aware.
WWE pay-per-view. So at the end of the day, oh no, we go back to the pay-per-view model.
Are you serious?
I don't care.
How? What? Your logic is that it was shit before, so it's okay to go back to it being shit?
Here's the thing. The fans that are loyal are going to stick with it, and people are going to pay for it anyways. People are going to pay to watch WWE. It doesn't matter if they're going to value it at 9.3 billion, and you can. This is where hold on. This is where I see what's wrong with people's complaining about this exact thing. Okay, when WWE went to the WWE Network for $9.99, it was a whole new thing, and people complained and bitched and complained, and they didn't want to do it. Guess what? They did it. People went and paid $9.99. When Netflix switched over from their $6.99 a month and they spiked it to $24.99, and then they changed it to, you can't share anymore. So now you got to pay $24.99 plus another $7.99. Guess what? People are paying for it. People are going to pay to watch WWE, or they're just going to stream it.
To me, it sounds like you're saying, well, we're getting a shit sandwich, but we're gonna eat it anyway. And exactly. But why? Like, why should consumers be okay with that? Like, and the fact that they're gonna pay for it is not because they're happy about paying for it. Is because they're fans of the product. And now we're saying that because they're fans of the product and they're going to consume that content, that now they have no choice but to be punished and pay 500% more than what they're used to. Maybe even more than 500%.
Right. That is exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying, because people are going to pay for it. You people are fans of the UFC and you see their business model, and you just said yourself, the evaluation of the UFC is higher than WWE. Guess what? In 10 years time, WWE and UFC are going to be the same, if not a little bit more of an evaluation, because WWE keeps following the Endeavor and UFC model. They will go to the pay-per-views. Yes, some people will fall off and find a way to stream it. Guess what? Dana White was able to cut that down real quick with people streaming UFC, and you see less UFC streams now. So yes, unfortunately, as a pro wrestling fan, and anyone can say Common Steve L or you're so wrong on this, I am wrong in what I'm saying, but I'm speaking the truth. People are going to either pay for it and deal with it. It's just like here in Canada, the carbon tax just went up, right? Carbon tax just went up. We still need to pay for gas. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, the shit's going to get paid for, and that's it.
I gotta say, man, I think this is a ludicrously bad take. Like it's ultimately the argument that it's going to be bad, so fucking deal with it. Is what I'm hearing you say, and I don't think that we should deal with it. Like the way that entertainment has been, that the way that entertainment is consumed has dramatically been revolutionized over the last 15 years. Like, we don't read the newspaper anymore. I go on Google and I'm able to consume content in the way that I want to consume it. To be funneled and forced to pay 5-6 times more for one singular event compared to what I was paying for a year, like I don't know, man. Like, I'm gonna pick and choose what I buy. It just like with the UFC. Like, I don't buy every single event. I pick and choose the events that I want to watch, that include the people that I want to watch. And that model works for the UFC because UFC fighters fight once a year, maybe twice a year, 3 times a year of their workhorses. But now we're talking about, and I guess this is a bad example with Roman Reigns being champion, but let's pretend that we had a workhorse champion, right? One that appears on every pay-per-view. Now, I have to pick and choose what pay-per-views I want to watch, and it's not going to be based on what talent is on the card. It's going to be based on whether or not I can afford it or not. And that's going to turn off a ton of people. I don't think it's going to be as simple as you're going to watch it anyway. I really just don't think so.
Santi, I think you're absolutely correct. And my point was not saying that it's take one or take the other. Or sorry, take my side of just deal with it and you're going to pay for it anyways. It's going to be selective purchases. So WWE is going to need to find a way to work around this. If Endeavor believes that going back to the pay-per-view model for WWE is the best course of action, then a true dead flat WWE fan is going to either say, okay, screw it, here's your shit sandwich, now you can go eat it, or you pick and choose on which events. So you're going to get, obviously, of different events are going to be costing different prices. So the top 4 will be a lot higher, especially for a 2-night. They'll package that as maybe like a $99 in the US. I'll use US currency right now. $99 for 2 nights, or
so, okay. Sorry, I keep digging at you for this, but I guess now I'm just really confused. Are you on the side that this is a good thing or a bad thing? That's what I'm not understanding.
It's bad, but you're still going to have to deal with it. That's my point. This is what I'm saying. It sucks that they're going to this model, but we've dealt with this model before, and a lot of wrestling fans dealt with it then, and a lot of wrestling fans are going to deal with it now. It's unfortunate, but I agree with you. I don't want to go to a pay-per-view model. I really don't. But at the end of the day, I'm a diehard wrestling fan. Guess what? I'm going to watch as many pay-per-views as I can and that I can afford. And if I have to somehow find other means of action of doing that without going to the pay-per-view model, guess what? I'm probably going to do it.
Okay. I'm glad I got that out of you, because it 100% sounded like you were defending all of this, and it made no sense to me.
I'm not defending it. I'm saying if this is the model, oh, well, we can't as wrestling fans do anything about it. That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying we're going to have to deal with it and find a way to be selective and go into another route, or just find a way to afford it, because it's what our passions are. But unfortunately, like, I just look at it this way. I'm like, all right, well, this is the model we're going to. What are you laughing at?
Just what you said. There was a few years ago, there was a gaming press conference, a company called Blizzard. All right. Everybody wanted them to release a game called Diablo 4. And instead they released Diablo for their phones with a lot of microtransactions. And everybody was mad about it. And on stage, they said, what, don't you guys have cell phones? I feel like that's what you said. Why don't you find a way to afford it? I don't know, man. I'm not on board with that.
No, I get you're not on board with that, but I'm just saying overall, if Endeavor decides to go the pay-per-view route with premium live events for WWE, right? It sucks that we have to go back to that model because listen, we are in a very strange state here in Canada and the US with how everything is inflation, and it's getting hard to afford a lot of non-necessities. But wrestling fans are going to find a way to either get around it or they're going to find a way to support it. But at the end of the day, it's what they're going to have to deal with moving forward if the pay-per-view model is what it's going to be. That is all my very runaround answer was for that part of this topic is unfortunately, oh well, and now we have to find a way to deal with it.
All right. What about sports gambling? Because that's the other big part of the UFC. The UFC, just for numbers, Steve, I was doing a little bit of research. Over the pandemic, over the 8 months of the original part of the pandemic, the UFC's revenue grew by 17% because they were the only sport you could gamble on at the time. So the UFC's a huge portion of the way that they bring in revenue is sports gambling. And there's a lot of, obviously there's been a lot of rumblings within the last couple of months about gambling being allowed into professional wrestling, which I both say that's stupid. And I also say, okay. You don't think I would bet on Omos to beat Elias? Because I'll fucking sell my house and and I will put everything on Omos to beat Elias on Monday Night Raw. So, okay, I'll gamble on WWE, but, yeah, like it's interesting because now those rumblings make sense with this purchase of Endeavor. You know, when you hear WWE and gambling, what is kind of your gut punch here?
It's kind of funny, Santi, because one of my jobs, and not many people here know what one of my jobs are, but I work for a subsidiary of MGM, PointsBet, and a lot of online gaming companies. So when I was down in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to some people from MGM, and I was like, so is this actually possible? And they're like, anything's possible. Can definitely happen. So I said to you before I had this conversation, I'm retiring and just going to watch pro wrestling for the rest of my life because I'm not going to need to work if WWE becomes a way to like gambling. So it's like I said, like I work for a subsidiary of MGM. So it's amazing because it'll be one of those ones where we can just sit back and be like, okay, Omos versus Elias. I am going to, like you said, bet the house because there was no way in hell that with Vince booking last night, Elias was going over.
Dude, I would literally create a pentagram and make a deal with the devil that Omos would win. That's how confident I would be. I would be willing to mortgage my soul, all right, with some of the results that, I guess I could conceivably potentially bet on. And yeah, you can gamble on anything. If I can gamble on the color of the fucking Gatorade at the Super Bowl celebration, I can gamble on what color, fucking Omos's socks are going to be on a particular match. Like anything, you can gamble on anything so long as Vegas can make odds on it and be on the winning side of it.
Just remember, buddy, gambling on WWE has been happening for over a year and a half right now on DraftKings. DraftKings has been running a pool every, I believe, Monday Night Raw. Every Monday Night Raw, you can put your bets down on what the finish of the card's going to be, and they put up 10 grand, and it's just a breakdown of whoever all gets them all right. They just put it into your account. So it's a free bracket system. It's a bracket system. So they've been doing it already. So they've kind of dipped their toe in the waters, but they just haven't been able to hit it full force. So I see this as a possibility what they'll probably do is make sure the writers are, the results stay in the writers' room until and the only people that know are the competitors, Gorilla, and the writers. No more leaks like what we get from Sean Ross Sapp and anything like that. It will be locked down heavily because Vegas, they don't mess around with their money. You're supposed to lose when you go to Vegas. So when you go on these gambling apps, you're supposed to lose. So sorry, somebody just said gambling on promos. Oh God. Anyways,
over under a number of LA Knight yes.
Yeah.
Dummy.
Oh,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm not against gambling on WWE, obviously, but I think we need to see over under on how many times Cody cries during a promo. Oh God. Anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna ask you now, now with the fallout of this episode of Monday Night Raw, and you know what, we might be talking a little bit prematurely because I think it's a fair statement to say that SmackDown is now the flagship show of WWE. It's the one that gets the most views and it's on the bigger network. So I don't think it's a ludicrous thing to say that SmackDown is the flagship show. And Friday night after Mania has recently become a thing. If people remember, that's Nakamura's call up from NXT. Like there's major debuts and major returns and major storylines that also start on the Friday night after SmackDown. Do you see anything happening here? Because I feel like the episode of Monday Night Raw really blocked the potential of anything interesting, like Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair. What the fuck? So like even like the possibility of somebody debuting on Rhea Ripley on SmackDown is already kind of like diminished because now they started something between those two. But do you see anything that could salvage this WrestleMania week on this episode of Friday Night SmackDown?
I don't see anything that can salvage this week. But I do see the opportunity of, say, Braun Breaker debuting, which I think that's just probably one of the only things that I can see coming from NXT.
So just, I don't know if you know, Braun Breaker is advertised and on front and center of NXT Battlegrounds, the May 27th NXT takeover. So
there we go. So that basically shuts it down then I don't see anything. Rumors today, and these are just rumors, but the whole rumor of Jay White coming to WWE has just been squashed today.
Out the fucking window.
Gone. Like I've never seen. It was so funny. You see hits and tidbits of it of, oh yeah, Jay White may be coming to WWE, and then literally after last night, you're like, nope.
If I was Jay White, I'd be getting the hell out of that.
I'd go to Ring of Honor, or Impact or something.
Dude, I'd go sell fucking washing machines.
I don't think the attraction of WWE is there right now with the uncertainty of the purchase, first off, because we don't know what Endeavor fully means yet. We all watched the interview with Vince and the owner or the executive, I can't remember his name, from Endeavor. And we all saw that, and it's like, oh, okay, like this, you kind of feel a little comfortable, a little. And then once you heard Vince was in charge, if I'm a wrestler, if I'm Seth, if I'm Kevin, if I'm Karrion Kross, if I'm Drew under the
Gunther,
if I'm Gunther, if I'm Bailey, hell, I hate to say this, even if I'm Charlotte, I'm starting to get worried because if I'm Alexa Bliss, I'm out the door.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm Alexa, because there's no creative for her right now, even though she's off.
You can basically squash Bray Wyatt returning. That's the whole reason he left, Vince McMahon.
Yeah, Bray's gone. It's to a point now. We the one thing I will say on SmackDown, Santi, what comes after WrestleMania?
Backlash. Cuts. Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, you're right. It's usually we get like a bloody spring.
Yeah. So if Karrion Kross does not go down to NXT and try and redevelop his character under Shawn, Karrion Kross is done. Gone. Any returns that we expected, Andrade, potentially, Alistair, none of them.
The LWO is going to be riding down in lawnmowers by the end of the fucking week under Vince McMahon. All right, because that's all we... Wait, what did you say?
The original.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying, to Vince, all Latinos all we are fucking gardeners. All right. So I'm already in fear of what's going to happen to the LWO.
Yeah. And I'm looking at some of the tweets that I read from wrestlers i.e. Asuka, Drew, Bailey over the last couple of days, it scares me. And that's some incredibly massive names that we could lose that have been flagship and center point of the show since Triple H took over in their respective fields. Bailey's carried a mid-card feud with Damage Control. Drew has put on some of the best matches I've ever seen Drew put on with Sheamus and Gunther, and just those feuds with Roman and everything. And obviously Asuka revitalizing herself as Kana. Unless those tweets mean that she's going to go darker, I think this means that New Japan is knocking on the door for Asuka right now.
Yeah, New Japan is actually like a relevant place for women to go now with Kairi Sane and Mercedes Monet over there. Yeah, I mean, forget about the possibility of Mercedes coming back to WWE. If I'm any of those major AEW guys like Kenny Omega, fucking forget that shit as well. Dude, like it's just such a somber feeling right now to be a WWE fan. And I am a giant WWE apologist. I will spin cycle anything to make anything shitty that WWE has done and make it sound good. Like, that's just what I do. But I can't spin this, man. Like, even I'm sitting in the corner being like, yo, like I'm seeing doom and gloom for the WWE here within the next couple of weeks. Because you're right, it is a combination of Vince McMahon coming back. It is cutting season, and cutting season would have happened even under Triple H, right? But we would have probably lost talent that would have made sense to lose. Meanwhile, with Vince, let's get rid of Keith Lee at the height of his popularity, right? Like, that's the type of releases that Vince McMahon is known for. So I haven't felt this doom and gloom about WWE in a really long time. I think we forgot about the skeletons in the closet that could have come back at any moment to come back to haunt us, and they're back, right? And now we have to face the reality of what can we do as fans? Like, nothing. First of all we can do is sit back and see what we decide. Now, here's the thing. Like a WWE fan, at the end of the day, as Steve was making and alluding to earlier, I'm going to endure through this. I endured through much worse of the era of Vince McMahon. So I'm going to endure through this and see and hopefully come out the other side. But if you're a wrestling fan that, you're not going to deal with this for the first time in a really long time, you have choices. Ring of Honor is easily accessible. AEW, New Japan is bigger than ever before. Impact is the most entertaining that it's been in forever. So wrestling fans have choices. I would say vote with your wallet, but I think the majority of wrestling fans, WWE fans, are going to end up being like me, where we're just going to take these insults and these slaps to the faces until Triple H comes back to the head of creative. And that's not, I'm not saying like, yeah, let's deal with it. I'm saying this fucking blows, dude. Like, I'm not happy about this, but
I've never come off such a high. I've never come off such a wrestling high to literally be sinking in my seat for 3 hours being like, when can I turn this shit off? I've never experienced that as a wrestling fan. And I don't know how that is. And I can't even say I'm hopeful for Smackdown, even though it's the bigger network. I can't even say I'm hopeful. Like, here's you want me to tell you how worried I am for Smackdown? Gunther, Sheamus, and Drew just put on a banger, I will say a 5-star match at WrestleMania. And I can see, if Vince is at the helm and booking this for SmackDown, I can see Gunther dropping to the likes of Dolph Ziggler. That's how bad I can see that being booked for Friday. Gunther does an open challenge and we get Dolph Ziggler. Dude, no disrespect to Dolph, but
yeah, Gunther's career, how do I put this? You ever seen Final Destination, Steve? Close calls, people almost dying. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Gunther's WWE career went through Final Destination because he was about to get fucking buried. Like 20 feet under, and that's when Vince's sexual assault allegations came to light. He was this close to just being buried to Kingdom Come. And of course, that didn't happen. He escaped with his life. He escaped with his career, and he made the most of it. I'm hoping, that Vince has enough of a fucking eye to open them and realize that he's got talent in there. It's just that, like, a lot of the awesome things, man, that have happened recently, like, Vince doesn't have the vision for that to happen anymore. Drew and Roman at Clash of the Castle, zero chance. The IC Championship and the US Championship feeling like main events, zero chance. Rhea Ripley and Charlotte putting on one of the best women's matches of all time, zero chance that happens. The tag team division feeling amazing, that doesn't happen. KSI appearing in a Prime bottle, never in a million years will that happen under Vince McMahon. Never. So, like, I'm at this point of I'm about to graduate from high school, and I'm seeing the pictures of me and from grade 9 to grade 12, and hearing the song "As We Go On, We Remember All the Times With." It feels like that. It feels like I'm about to go from the best times of my life. Not that I peaked in high school or anything. I'm a fucking G right now. All right. Into the fucking doldrums. All right. That's how I feel. And that's how that episode of Monday Night Raw felt. There's a quote from The Office, man, that I live and breathe by. I wish you knew you were in the good old days during the good old days. Because we were in the good old days under Triple H over the last 7 months. Yep. And Monday Night Raw made us quickly remember that the good old days are done.
I'm surprised Austin Theory didn't win the unified titles on Monday night.
Again.
I'm surprised Vince just didn't book it and just give it to Austin Theory. Daddy's back. Here's your titles. So, anyway, Santi, I think we've beaten this horse to death. Guys, let us know in the comments if you are watching on YouTube. Please like and subscribe and leave a positive comment. But I know there's been some pretty hot takes during our conversation, so feel free to hit on those as well. If you're listening to podcast services anywhere and everywhere, make sure you like and give us a star rating if it's available. It really helps with boosting our content. Really appreciate you guys listening. Santi, where can people find you?
You can find me over on twitch.tv/SantiZap or over on TikTok at Mr. SantiZap as well. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Straight Shoot, a wrestling podcast. Have a wonderful day and take care.